Hi friends, I hope you all are doing amazingly well in your respective lives. This is Kanal Nagpal representing Nagpal Academic Academia, and I would like to welcome you all to this amazing economic discussion of today's, wherein we are actually going to focus on a very strategic matter which is of crucial concern for the masses across the globe. That is, the main focus of various economies worldwide is actually to go green, paying maximum emphasis to the sustainable development because of the rapid climate change which is going on. So the call of time is to act now in this particular regard. My dear friends, actually there is the dilemma whether to pursue the developmental goals or to pay maximum emphasis towards sustainable development. And obviously, the wise approach would be to attain an optimum balance between these two goals. Yes, we can draw a similarity with the economic goals. For instance, in case of economic environment, worldwide, we have to maintain the balance between the reduction of inflation and maximization of the GDP, that is economic growth. Similarly, if we talk in terms of sustainable development or from ecological point of view, here also we need to attain an optimum balance between the two strategic goals, that is the developmental goals, that is overall infrastructural development, and simultaneously paying utmost importance to the core goal of going green, that is the decarbonization of the entire economy. And for this particular purpose, in our motherland, our respected Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, along with various departments, various concerned departments, has actually taken a very noble project or a very noble initiative, that is to decarbonize the entire economy by 2070. And for this, we are actually trying to switch from the fossil fuels to the non-fossil fuels. We are trying to explore the maximum alternatives which are actually eco-friendly. The eco-friendly fuels, be it in the energy sector, be it in the food sector. We are also trying to explore maximum options of enhancing the overall infrastructure to actually build the hydrogen-based economy, since hydrogen is actually the safest gaseous fuel along with the biogas. So, my dear friends, this actually is calling for the second green revolution if we talk specifically about the Indian economy. And also I would like to bring to your knowledge, as all of us are quite aware of also, that our economy, India, is actually acting as a bright star or a lighthouse across the entire global economy because of its beautiful prospects, its stability, and its overall stable performance in its economic parameters, as it is having very less fluctuations if we draw the comparative analysis with the rest of the countries across the globe. So we need to pay utmost emphasis, utmost importance towards this particular agenda as well, that is the second green revolution. So otherwise it will actually lead to the $1 trillion threat. I hope you are getting it. So my dear friends, while India actually needs to accelerate its overall growth, there is also a great need to basically keep the impact of climate change in mind. The carbon intensive growth model should be basically replaced by a green growth led one in order to keep growing sustainably. That actually calls to give utmost importance towards the two prominent sustainable development goals, that is SDGs, that is SDG 7 and SDG 13, which actually emphasize towards going green, paying utmost importance to the climate change concerns. And we will come to know in our discussion that India's green transformation will entirely depend on the continuing advancement of the three drivers of growth, that is, technological development, financial innovation, and strong political leadership. These three drivers are actually the core factors to be actually given utmost importance for the successful implementation of this second green revolution in our economy. So my dear friends, when we actually crystal gaze, there is actually a pathway that emerges where India could actually achieve the full potential of the positive economic narrative while minimizing some of the worst effects of the climate change narrative. So in this pathway, India's green transformation is basically a vital and a very integral component of its overall economic transformation. So in order to keep growing sustainably, India has to move away from a carbon-intensive growth model to the green growth-led one. And India at 2047, the 100th year of its independence, is actually poised for two heavily divergent scenarios. One, a scenario of exceptional growth and economic prosperity, and the other, a scenario of extreme climate-led disruption and economic loss. So this basically calls for attaining utmost balance and optimum balance between these two scenarios, as we have discussed in the beginning of our discussion. And India's first green revolution actually helped it overcome a hunger crisis by basically transforming the agricultural sector into a modern industrial system. The time is now ripe for India's second green revolution to actually shift away from a carbon-intensive legacy growth model and leapfrog into a green growth model led by low or no emissions technologies. My dear friends, there is an emerging consensus that by the year 2047, our motherland India would have overtaken the United States of America as the second largest economy. So for the next 3 decades, India will be home to not just the largest, but also one of the youngest populations in the world, that is with the maximum demographic dividend. So in this narrative economic transformation in an otherwise rapidly aging world, India's youthful workforce will actually power the global economy over the next 3 decades, just like China's workforce powered the world for the past 3 decades. Now it's India's turn. So this much awaited economic transformation is actually expected to lift hundreds of millions of India's citizens above the poverty line and therefore help the country enter the league of middle income countries. Now, on the other hand, there is also an emerging consensus around an alternative narrative, in which India is actually expected to be one of the most economically harmed by climate change. So, my dear friends, this actually helps us to realize what is the basic reason that we are stating that India is expected to be one of the most economically harmed by climate change. This basically helps us to realize that India lies in the subtropical region near the equatorial belt. So its geographical position actually puts India in a very danger zone, in a high danger zone. So this implies that we need to put in more proactive measures with a far-sighted vision, paying utmost importance to SDG 7 and SDG 13 to make our country decarbonized in each and every aspect at the best possible level. So, my dear friends, our respected leaders are therefore putting their best efforts towards this particular realization of this noble vision. And in this narrative, India will be exposed to a range of adverse climate outcomes, that is, rising sea levels, groundwater scarcity, extreme weather patterns, that is, heat waves, droughts, extreme rainfall, and so on, fall in crop production, and a rise in health hazards. And obviously, as of now, we can see the evidence of these particular crises in several states of the country. India is expected to be soon one of the first places to experience the heat waves that will cross the survivability limit for a healthy human being sitting in the shade. And without the targeted climate adaptation, millions of Indians could be exposed to a lethal heat wave as early as 2030. And my dear friends, in this ongoing year 2023, we are witnessing rapid changes in the climate. If we draw the comparative analysis with the overall scenario in terms of climate which used to exist like 5 years back or 7 years back, there's a rapid transformation. So this really calls for an urgent action. And also across the 6 port cities, Chennai, Kochi, Kolkata, Mumbai, Surat, and Visakhapatnam, 28.6 million people could be exposed to the coastal flooding if the sea levels rise by 50 centimeters. The assets exposed to the flooding would be worth about $4 trillion. In this grim outlook, some analysts estimate that India could actually lose over 25% of its gross domestic product annually by 2050 due to the climate change risks. So, my dear friends, extreme weather conditions have already impacted large parts of the country, with many places experiencing the droughts. So, with the emerging consensus around both narratives, which of these is likely to be true? So, my dear friends, when we basically crystal gaze, there emerges a pathway where India could still achieve the full potential of the positive economic narrative while minimizing some of the worst effects of the climate change narrative. So in this pathway, India's green transformation is a very vital and integral component of its overall economic transformation. So, how then can India actually realize the promise of its green transformation and thereby its economic transformation? Yes, my dear friends, these two goals, that is green transformation and economic transformation need to go in parallel with each other. They are very much correlated with each other, and as we had discussed in the beginning, we need to attain an optimum balance between the developmental goals and the green development. These are very, very in sync with each other. Hence, our overall efforts and overall approach should be focused on attaining the maximum synchronization with full coordinated approach by the concerned departments. India's per capita energy use today is actually lower than that of most nations. Its use of materials such as iron is still modest, and its manufacturing sector is still likely to grow and add capacity for a long time to come. Unlike the developed nations with mature greenhouse gas infrastructure, India is yet to build a lot of its greenhouse gas inventory. So as India grows, so could its greenhouse gas footprint. So this is something that neither India nor the world can afford. Yes, my friends, this is a very, very crucial time, and this requires an urgent attention. However, even if India's growth does not need to factor in higher consumption levels across its population, it has a unique opportunity to basically leapfrog this journey through low or no emissions technologies. So in order to deliver on this particular opportunity, India will actually need to address the emissions from 5 sectors that basically contribute to almost all its greenhouse gas emissions. First of all, let's talk about transforming the energy sector. My dear friends, the energy sector actually accounts for about 40% of India's greenhouse gas emissions, with coal being the dominant source of total fossil carbon dioxide gas emissions. So decarbonizing the energy sector is a foundational priority for India's energy sector and will require a three-pronged approach. That is, replace the fossil fuels with the renewables. Second, reduce the fossil carbon dioxide gas emissions from the legacy infrastructure through enhanced efficiencies. And thirdly, remove unavoidable carbon emissions through the carbon sequestration. I repeat, this three-pronged approach which needs to be implemented. That is, replace the fossil fuels with renewables, reduce the fossil carbon dioxide gas emissions from the legacy infrastructure through enhanced efficiencies, and thirdly, remove the unavoidable carbon emissions through carbon sequestration. So this was all about the energy sector, how we need to implement the transformation in this particular sector in order to realize the goals of the balanced green developmental goals and the overall economic developmental goals. Hence, sustainable growth will actually need a greener mix of generating power. Now, secondly, let's talk about decarbonizing the mobility sector. My dear friends, the mobility sector is actually heavily reliant on oil and contributes to almost half of India's oil demand. So green transformation of mobility will basically need a shift in the modal mix from road to rail, as well as a broad-based fuel diversification approach to encourage the sustainable fuels, that is biofuels, compressed natural gas, that is CNG, liquefied natural gas, that is LNG, in the immediate term, electrification in the medium term, and hydrogen-based heavy mobility in the long term. And obviously, we are seeing that under the governance of Mr. Nitin Gadkari ji, the automobile sector is actually undergoing rapid transformation towards the attainment of the green development goals. So addressing the emissions from the industrial sector, especially hard to abate sectors, manufacturing is a key contributor to India's greenhouse gas emissions, with the iron and steel, cement, and chemical and fertilizer sectors having the highest CO2 footprint. A radical decarbonization of these sectors will need demand management measures such as circular economy acceleration, continued energy efficiency improvements, electrification of heat, carbon capture, utilization and storage, low carbon fuels such as biomass and hydrogen, and innovative technologies with the non-fossil feedstock. So, my dear friends, we can explore a variety of alternatives which are available to us. And as it is rightly quoted, where there is the will, there is the way. So, we need to capitalize our overall strengths and optimize and align our resources in a correct manner in order to attain the well-balanced vision and the optimum goal of green development and overall economic development. And obviously, as I have said, this actually calls for an overall synchronized and well-coordinated approach. Next, let's talk about how to evolve a sustainable agricultural sector. That is the primary sector of our economy. The agricultural sector is actually the largest contributor to the nitrous oxide and methane emissions. So in order to reduce the agricultural emissions, India will need a national campaign to empower, educate, and enable more than 100 million farmers in adopting precision agriculture, sustainable animal husbandry, and green energy. Next, let's talk about the infrastructural segment of our country, that is, how to implement the green technology, that is, greening of buildings, infrastructure, and cities. My dear friends, India's top 25 cities contribute more than 15% of its overall estimated greenhouse gas emissions. The rapid transition to the greener cities, buildings, and infrastructure will actually need a rethink of the country's approach to urban planning, with a focus on transit-oriented urban development and an overall emphasis on low-carbon buildings and infrastructure construction. So in addition to these 5 priority sectors which we have just discussed, that is the infrastructural sector, agricultural sector, mobility sector, that is the automobile sector, and energy sector, we basically need to adopt the cross-sectoral enablers for this particular revolution, hence accelerating the approach to green technology innovation, catalyzing the green finance, industrializing the carbon sequestration, and scaling up national climate adaptation plans. My dear friends, as I had quoted in the beginning of our discussion, India's green transformation will entirely depend on the continuing advancement of the 3 drivers of growth across all the 5 sectors of the economy which we have discussed. That is, these 3 drivers are technological development, financial innovation, and strong political leadership. Actually, if we talk about facts, In the recent past, technological innovation reduced the physical cost of building the components of solar plants. Financial innovation allowed for the front-loaded costs of these plants to be adjusted for, and political leadership ensured that these plants were actually integrated into the legacy network holistically. So, with this confluence of technology, finance, and leadership, India now has the lowest per unit installation cost of renewable energy in the world. So it is these three drivers, that is technological development, financial innovation, and strong political leadership, that can also now help solve India's two grand challenges: its development aspirations and the climate crisis, and lead the world with a green growth model. So, my dear friends, with this context, we argue that it is actually the time now the government, the private sector, investors, civil society organizations, and individual citizens of the country need to step forward and hence catalyze India's second green revolution with the holistic approach. So, my dear friends, I am pretty sure that all of you must have got aware of this critical matter of strategic concern, that is actually revolving around the second green revolution in the Indian economy. And this is actually the call of nature to pay utmost importance to the sustainable development goals, and specifically talking about SDG 7 and SDG 13. And obviously all concerned departments are putting in their best possible efforts. So I really hope that you would have found this session really very insightful, helping to enhance your overall knowledge set and helping you to cultivate new ideas at the individual level on how we can actually work on bringing in new innovative solutions with the overall creative approach to accelerate our overall efforts in this particular regard, since this is actually the need of the hour, and this basically calls for the collective action and teamwork. So I would like to conclude my session here itself, and I really wish you all take excellent care of yourselves until we meet next. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.